Okay. Very good. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Professor Kambui. I'm a professor of psychiatry at the University of Oxford. This webinar is brought to you courtesy of the World Psychiatric Association Collaborating Centre in Oxford in partnership with the Chimes Collaborative, part of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Oxford. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our speaker, Professor Prashant Kumar, who is a founding co-director of the Pan University Institute for Sustainability, a professor and chair in air quality and health, and founding director of the international leading research centre on the Global Centre for Clean Air Research at the University of Surrey. He's the founder of the successfully running Guildford Living Lab, a trustee of Zero Carbon Guildford, and adjunct professor at Trinity College, Dublin, Ireland, and a guest professor at Southeast University, China. He's going to be talking about greening and nature-based interventions for indoor and outdoor environments. As I say, he's a world expert, and we're very, very lucky and privileged to have him speak to us. He'll speak for about 30 or 40 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A. Just some housekeeping before I ask Prashant to begin his presentation. The webinar will be recorded so that it will be publicly available on our YouTube channel. And you'll be notified when it's available. Please switch off the cameras and mics if not already turned off, as it will interfere with the presentation. Obviously, if you have Q&A later, we can see how we go with it. We can switch them on. It's always nice to see people and see smiles. Please don't use an AI note taker. These are not permitted for information security reasons. We've been asked to remove any AI note takers from software in any meetings that we hold. So thank you for that. Please post questions in the Q&A, and these will be taken at the end when there will be time for some questions. The chat function is switched on, so you can use the chat for general information, but if you could restrict your questions to Q&As, please, I'd be very, very grateful. So with that housekeeping in mind, I'd love to now welcome Professor Kumar to give his presentation, which we've all been really looking forward to. Thank you, Prashant. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kham and Eve, for the opportunity to talk about some of the work we have been doing at the Global Centre for Clean Air Research at Surrey. So I thought today I will mostly talk about the greening and what does this mean actually, to the indoor and outdoor environments. But before I start, I would like to thank all the team members who have been contributed in the past to the work. As you can see on the left, actually, this is the time when we launched actually the center in 2017. And then team since then has moved and changed and evolved. So thanks for everybody who have been contributing, to this work there. So just to say very quickly, the Global Centre for Clean Air Research, one of the main aims of the work actually we have been doing is trying to build the interfaces of the air pollution and climate change with the help of the people.
Can I just pause you? Have we got your presentation? I can't see it, and I don't know if it's a function of my system, but are people able to see it? Can you see it?
Interesting.
No, I can't see it.
You can't see it?
Yeah.
Here it's come. Yeah, if you could share it now. Yeah.
Sorry for that. I think
I was going to just let you talk, but I thought better just check.
Okay, so you don't miss. Now you can see it, right?
Yeah, yes. Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, so that was my first slide, and that's about the center I was talking about, and this is what I was here. So the work we have been doing is around the pollution, emissions, and exposure. So in indoor and outdoor environments, looking into the interfaces of the pollution with the health. There's quite a lot of work around the low-cost sensing, which is one of the key areas of research, and the nature-based solutions. So one of the things which I'm really proud of is we run Guildford Living Lab. So this is basically a platform where we work with the local community to co-design solutions for air pollution and climate change. So I'm going to give some of the examples of the work we have been doing there. So there are a number of projects which currently have been involved. Some of them I've been leading, like the GP4 estates, which is the greening prescription for urban estates, greening micro network plus, and the reclaim network plus. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of this work, which is more focused around the indoor greening and outdoor greening and how it can help with the climate resilience. But then there is quite a lot of work around the indoor air pollution, outdoor air pollution, looking into the airborne infection in in schools and ships and other places there. So I will just touch upon on that. But one of the things which we really do is to also convert actually this complex science into some take-home messages, simple take-home messages through guidances. So we have published quite a series of the guidances like on green infrastructure, for school exposure, for cooking, and this How to Urban toolkit, which has just been released today. So there is a press release today. If you wanted to know more about it, it's a fascinating, sort of a exercise we have been doing for over a year now. So the apart from that, actually, there's we got some lab. We got a lab which allows us to do some bespoke work, and one of the bespoke sort of facilities we have is called Evolution Chamber, where you could use the sensors and you can create actually the environmental and pollution conditions of any city, and that allows you to understand how the sensors work before you deploy them. So the work is supported through the lab. But I think just to go back to a little bit on the air pollution side, I'm sure that you might have heard the case of the Ella that was she kind of died from the high air pollution exposure in London. This is a historic decision in 2020 where the coroner included air pollution as a death on the certificate of this 13-year-old Ella. So there's a lot of issues in terms of the exposure to the pollutants, and that has now started getting a little bit more sort of the attention and the into the by seen as a as a key issue there. Now, if you think about the air pollution globally, so this is like a global map there. So what you just need to see is the color there. So this color, less than 5 microgram, if you see this, the blue color there, is the WHO limit. But if you look around, actually, the majority of the part of the world that sort of, the breach actually the PM 2.5 exposure concentrations. And if you try to put it into some sort of a very simple picture, you don't need to read through all these details. But if you look at on the left-hand side are different cities there, and these are mostly the Asian and African cities. And on the right-hand side, these are the European and the US cities there. But you see that most of these cities, basically, they do not meet actually the air quality standards. So what does this mean? That means that the air we breathe is not the same actually at all the places. And it's not just, the challenge for one city, it's a city for, everyone. But then what's outside doesn't stay outside. It's also find its way indoors. So it becomes quite important to also understand then what are the things which are happening, in the interface of the indoor-outdoor sort of concentrations. And interestingly enough, we are the same people, right? So if you look around the regulations, let's say for PM 2.5, India has 40, China 35, European, the union that you can see around 25. So you can see like a very different sort of, the level of, the exposure limits which has been set. But obviously they are also depending on the technology of the vehicle, the fuel types and so on. So but if you think around the population actually, so in terms of India and China, they almost make up like almost, the 3 billion population. And this is where I think you still see the highest sort of, the exposure. So this is also the areas where one can really make a significant impact in terms of, reducing the impact of this exposure there. So the another very interesting thing is, despite spending majority of time is indoors, there are no indoor air quality regulations. So there is a group of 36 plus, which is led by Professor Lydia Moravska. So we have been working and pushing this agenda to to have the indoor air pollution regulations there. So this was a science paper we published last year, where we set up very simple sort of the metrics that could be measured in the indoor environment that can allow to sort of understand and maintain actually the quality of the air we breathe inside. Now, in our case, we have been quite actively working on the indoor environment, understanding the exposure in classrooms, cruise ships, rail, underground restaurants, the kitchen, homes. So we have carried out like a huge amount of work actually in this particular area to understand the exposure, what is the variability, what are the factors. But today I'm not going to talk about it, but there is a lot more work if you're interested. If you go under the GCare under publications, then you can find out what are the work actually in there. Now coming back to the greening actually. So I think we all love the trees basically, and there are all over the place. You will see in different cities there, and this is very much acknowledged, by our government policies. So, for example, the Natural England's Green Infrastructure Framework that suggests to increase the amount of green cover to 40% in urban residential areas. So that's sort of a target actually there. But that also means that there is a lot more needed to be done in terms of understanding that what and where you should put actually the green infrastructure. And then I'm not sure whether you looked around this news article that came in July 2024 last year, where it says Londoners should be charged for paving gardens. What does this mean? That if you have your garden and if you are paving them with concrete, then they should possibly be charged. The reason being that because this traps heat, and on the hot days, it really contribute to the overheating of the area, and that could have several sort of the impact on the health. Now, one of the challenges usually people have is that if you could not pave it, but at the same time you should know actually what you should be able to do in terms of putting the green blue infrastructure. So there is still quite a lot of gap exist, and this is where one of the projects I will talk about later on is called GP Forestry comes in. But what you see usually is this green infrastructure in different shapes and forms. So you can have trees, parks, gardens, urban green spaces, and there's quite a lot of new sort of the categories which are entering into it. It's called living pillars. So you might have seen these pillars where you can have these are the electric poles basically in general, but then you can have the greening around it and can have some habitat for the the bees and other sort of the birds and so on. So to bring biodiversity to the areas. So in a sense that you can have the green infrastructure that could be in various forms. They provide multi benefits, but they are usually looked in isolation. So what happens then if you talk about the controlling, let's say, the exposure there? So you can think of the two major ways. One is active control. So what you're doing is you try to control at the source itself. So for example, if you got a traffic, the transport emissions, if you control on the tailpipe, then that means that that's called the source control. The other one is the receptor. So when things happens, what you do on the onto the receptor itself, like the face mask is a good example of it. But then there is something in between. This is called the passive solutions, like the green barriers. And there is quite a bit of work actually I'm going to present about it, so what these green barriers could help in terms of reducing the exposure. But if you think on a bigger picture, what does, let's say, the urban greening do? And you think from the perspective of, let's say, if I have the plants that allows actually the surfaces, the pollutants could deposit on it. So it helps basically reducing the pollutants. It always attracts actually the green space, attracts the physical activity and the people there. And if you strategically place actually these around the roadside, then you can also have the downwind sort of pollution exposure there. But then urban cooling is another aspect. So if you have a lot more trees and plants in there that can help to cool actually those areas. But then there are also sometimes unintended consequences, which usually we should not ignore. For example, some of the trees could produce pollens, and these pollens could really make things worse. For some of the people are allergic. It can also produce the BVOCs, which is called the biogenic volatile organic compounds. And if you have the NOx, which is coming out from the traffic, and in the presence of sunlight, it can create ozone, so which is a secondary pollutant. So the key take-home message from there is it's really important to choose what and where to place this green infrastructure when it comes to the implementation of it. So this is a kind of a very simple summary of what you could do and how you can sort of try to divide actually those areas. So let's say if you look at an urban area, you can divide them into two major categories. The one is the street canyons. So street canyons are the road and you got the buildings on the both side. And then you got the open road where you got the, you got the vehicles and there is no sort of, the buildings around it. So if you put a tree in, let's say, in street canyons, so depending on the aspect ratio, that could really make things worse. So it can really trap the pollutants rather than providing benefit, could provide basically the disbenefits. But if you are putting that in an open area, so you will see the green basically where you can have the improvement of it. So this was the paper we published, in 2017, and that won the Hagen-Smith Prize for 2023. This is really a good guide actually in terms of telling what are the types of green infrastructure exist, what are the implications in terms of putting them in which sort of environment there, and then a lot of it basically also appeared in this particular green infrastructure abatement guide we published some time ago, which has been quite popular and used by quite a lot of people in the councils as well as in schools. So when you have the street canyon, let's say, environment, if you go a little bit deeper in there, so what happens in this particular case, you got the air, so the air moves up, and then when the air is circulating around it, so it basically sweeps the pollution away. And that sweeping effect basically, it helps to breathe actually these street canyons. So this is what sometimes you call it the breathability of the street canyons. But what happens is then if you try to put in the trees, the big trees in it, then it can trap actually the pollutants and make things worse there. So if you have the low shrub hedges, you could still have this, the circulation of the pollutants in there. And if you have the green walls, then that doesn't affect that as well. So sometimes it's quite really important to think about what are the things which could fit well in a particular scenario when it comes to the greening. But if you come in the open road conditions, it's quite straightforward. You have basically the vehicles, you got the emissions coming through, and if there is a wind coming in, then anything which is coming out will expose to the people who are on the roadside. But if you are putting the barriers in between the source and the receptor, this is what we were discussing earlier, then you see basically a lot more impact in terms of the reduction of the pollutants. So having those, sort of barriers actually in between, they could sometimes help as a natural filtering system to delay actually to reach the fresh emissions to the people, but at the same time diluting and some of it being deposited on the surfaces to reduce the exposure to the people who are walking along roadside. Now, if you think about the street canyons, you can divide them into three different categories. So one of them is deep street canyons. So you will see them in big cities where you got very tall buildings, and then you got a road in between. And if your height of the buildings to the ratio of the width of the road is greater than 2, so you call them deep. In this particular case, actually, you can have multiple vortex of the flow. So when the wind is flowing through, it can have vortexes, and these vortexes basically could trap inside. So if you're putting more trees in these sort of scenarios there, they might trap actually the pollutants which are coming from the traffic emissions there. But if you have the shallow street canyons, like where you got the building height is not very much, but the roadside is very big, then you might end up in a situation, you will see a lot of these sort of street canyons in US, for example, where you got enough place actually for the air to flow around, and you can put trees or the hedges, whatever you like in there. And if it is in between, then you need to think about whether it should be suitable for the trees and what sort of hedges or the green walls you could put it in. So we summarize a lot of this stuff actually into this in the guidance in a very simple way. So if you are interested, you can have a look, look around it. So this is a very interesting example, and possibly one of the very first studies which really captures the whole year cycle of the hedges and the pollution. So this is on the York Road, which is in Guildford, which is a very busy road. And then it's a very busy playground. So there are children, the elderly people sitting in there. And this is the same hedge. So you can see it's in dormancy stage. So LAI is the leaf area index, which means that the porosity of this hedge is high. It means that you can see pass through easily. And then it started greening up. So the LAI starts increasing and then it's fully green up. So this is like 7 to 8, and it's like looks like a dense barrier there. So these are the three figures on the left side. So this is PM1, PM2.5, PM10. So let's pick up PM1 as one example. So this, the first part actually is showing the dormancy period. So where the difference between the outside and inside is almost around 8%. When it started greening up, then you suddenly see that it's the efficacy start increasing, and when it's fully green, you almost see around 52% of reduction there. So it gives a very clear, the message there. The one is that having this sort of, the hedges that allows you to create a natural barrier and can reduce the exposure quite significantly. But at the same time, there's another message there is that if you wanted to get actually the benefit of these hedges across the year, so you might want to stick to the more sort of evergreen sort of hedges rather than being, the deciduous ones. This is another example which we carried out in London, the 2 years back. And this is the Lambeth School. This is one of the schools in Lambeth area. It's quite a heavy pollution there. And then this is a playground on the other side of, the green screen. So we created this barrier of the green screen there. So the green screen is a little bit different to the hedges. So the hedges are basically which you are planting onto the ground, but these are like the planter points, and there is the wire mesh on top of it. So the things basically, the things could just go across this, and this can create like a little barrier of the green these green plants there. So this is ivy, by the way, and this is we found out around 42% or 40% reduction provided by actually these this barrier there. And over the time, usually this gets more denser, and you will see the impact would be much more dense. So if you think from a perspective of what sort of greening you could do and how it can make a difference there. So it's a very simple example. Like you got really the very gray sort of areas, and then on those gray areas you can really create actually the other different features of the greening, and that could help with your cooling, pollution, active travel, biodiversity, aesthetics, and the well-being. So this was basically one of the ideas we had, and then this led to this Reclaim Network Plus. So whether we can have some holistic assessment of the green-blue infrastructure in cities and how we can embed it. So the Reclaim is basically a UKRI-funded Network Plus, which is still running until February. And this basically the whole idea of the network is to bring together the community who is interested into implementing the green and blue infrastructure, in the urban areas there. So we have carried out a lot of work in this particular, at the back of the network, which includes secondment opportunities, workshops. We funded around 10 case studies. Which has created actually the very nice sort of the work around the green and blue infrastructure, the projects, and all of them are documented on the Reclaim Network website, where you can see the nice videos around them. We run the webinar series, which is running continuously for over 42 webinars we have delivered so far, if I remember correctly, without missing actually in the last 42 months. And there has been a lot actually more which is going on. So we had our conferences. This has been quite multidisciplinary. One of the highlights of these conferences usually have been that there has been a huge community of non-academic, the people who comes from, let's say, from the businesses, from the charities, from councils, the individuals, apart from obviously the academic sort of community there. So this has been a fantastic sort of opportunity to do a lot more work in this particular area, but also build the community of researchers and the non-academics who are interested in this particular area, while supporting a lot of exchanges as well. So there's been a number of the young researchers who wants to work with the councils or with the other places. So there is a significant amount of activity. I'm not going to go into detail, but if you can go onto the Reclaim Network Plus, you can see a lot of these activities and the opportunities actually to engage with the network there. So as I said, we got around 740 members, if I remember correctly, from over 45 countries representing. So it was supposed to be the UK, but as you can understand now from the members base itself, that it has been quite a popular topic, and it's quite relevant actually to the countries outside the UK. And majority of the people, obviously, we have from the academia, but then there's colleagues coming from charities, consultancy services, local governments, and they have got their wider interest in terms of the trees, planting, health and well-being, and so on. So it's been a fascinating project, which not only build this community, but we also led actually quite a few, the large sort of, the initiatives. And one of those initiatives was having a synthesis series of the reviews. So one of the reviews in the very beginning we did was around the urban overheating and how does the green infrastructure affect it. And one of the key things of this review was that we categorized actually these green infrastructure types into 51 different categories. So as you can see them, written underneath these these headings there, and then they were basically across the 10 main categories there. Now this worm basically shows that how the temperature, the mitigation from this different type of these greening features could help in cities. But one of the interesting thing to see from this figure is also, if you look around this golden, these words, these are the ones actually where we find the literature. So in fact, majority of the places we could not find actually the literature there. So that also tells you one story. That is that a lot of the greening work which happens, a lot of time actually is more on the expert judgment rather than being on the on the evidence base. This has been quite a nice paper actually. So where the Professor Bui was involved, and there was a lot of other colleagues who were involved across the UK and internationally. It has been quite popular with the UNDRR, the World Economic Forum, using actually this to promote some of these activities. Then we carried forward the theme, and this time around we looked around the green-blue infrastructure for pollution mitigation, air pollution mitigation, and we looked into the different type of this, all 51 different types. And then we try to understand actually where the literature exists and where it doesn't. And what we found was there are still, air pollution is quite a widespread studied topic. But if you see the golden, the words in this particular category are the ones where we don't have any data at the moment. So in a way that there is a lot of gap exist in the data. A lot of the work we are seeing, which has been put around, is talking about how things looks good actually aesthetically, rather really understanding actually what sort of value they could provide. So if you're a researcher and interested in this particular area, there are a number of these areas. I think they are quite quite open actually for research, where the better understanding or some data is needed to be developed. Now, this is just fresh off the press. So this just came in yesterday itself. There was this paper in the final form. I have a pleasure of leading around 86 collaborators across 11 countries. And the whole idea there was then to understand what are the overlooked considerations in prescribing green and blue infrastructure solutions for urban environments. So what are the barriers basically, which are usually not considered in detail, but they are really hindering the implementation. So we looked around 21 of these barriers there, and they were done across four the domains. So we understand about the environmental, social, cultural, and policy and governance domain. And we came up with 12 actionable recommendations. This is a really good paper, which I would really recommend actually to read if you are interested in any of these topic areas. It's a wealth of knowledge actually, which has been put together by a huge amount of the colleagues who have been working in this particular area for a long time. So we try to kind of understand what are the barriers and how you can sort of overcome these sort of challenges there. So yeah, I mean, this is currently, you could see there are quite a lot of news articles around this work, so which is going on in the media. But if you just think about a little bit, the bigger perspective, so in terms of the social barriers, you can think about environmental injustice and the GBI decision making. So how does environmental injustice kind of play a role? Cultural perspectives are really a bigger thing. Social adoption, safety and security. So sometimes it's not just about putting things in, it's also about what will be the implications of those things in there. The same way, there are loads of the issues in terms of the economic. So one of the biggest challenge you always see is the cost benefit analysis. So we mostly you will see that the benefits actually are sort of underestimated, in a sense that there are a lot more you could do, because some of the stuff, let's say on the social areas, on the environmental areas, you can't really put a pound value on it. So, I mean, this was a really a good exercise to understand the different perspectives and then come up with some sort of recommendations what it could do. So, just following on Reclaim, one of the things which I was mentioning today. So there is a press release which has just come out today. So one of the suggestions by the advisory board that came to us was that, look, we have the councillors, local authorities, and the officers. So one of the things we really require in this particular domain is what would be the simple sort of communication strategy to the people, so that could really be explained and used by the councils in terms of explaining and implementing some of these measures there. So you can see the list of co-authors there, which come from the variety of councils across the UK, but some of the academics involved in there as well. And this has been a fascinating journey to co-design this activity and this guidance over the last, let's say, year. And what it basically includes is it has got the 6 fact sheets inside it. So each fact sheet basically talks about the challenges and what are the opportunities and the solutions to it. So it starts with the urban greening for air pollution, for flood mitigation, for health and well-being, heat mitigation, noise, and storing carbon, and then summarizes with some of these key take-home simple messages there. So I think it will be quite an interesting document, which is written in a public-facing language, to have a look if you are interested in this particular sort of area. But if you are representing any councils or any the authorities, local authorities, please do get in touch, and we'll be really happy to work with you to see how we can sort of take this forward, or how we can work together to to take this forward in your council area. Now, I'm just talking a little bit about now how the community could really help to co-design some of the solutions, and they can sort of the co-own them. So I've been quite active in going to the schools, to the council offices, to so on the top left side is our previous MP. We designed a tool which is a nice program. It's called Heat Cool. So it's like a fun learning program. So what it basically does is you got the iPad, which is attached with the cameras, and the children can really play around it. And the whole idea there is to bring the climate literacy among them, so that they can understand what is happening around them, what is it which is trapping the heat, what is it which is making the environment cooler, what they could do actually to improve their environment there. And then we also created a tool which is called HedgeDate. So the HedgeDate is not really a dating app, but it's basically a tool which can allow you to design your own hedges. So in fact, if you are interested, you Google it, you put some numbers in there, it will tell you that how big your hedge could be, what sort of air pollution reduction it will have, what sort of what do you call them, the sort of species you might want it to put it in. So it allows you to choose different species there. So the Guildford Living Lab basically that was established on the back of the iScape Living Lab, which was a project which started in 2017. And the whole idea of the Living Lab concept has been just reversing the process. So as an academics, what we usually do, we first do the work, create some fantastic research, and then give it to the colleagues or to the people or the policymakers to use it. But the whole idea of the Living Lab is to understand the pollution, the problems with the community, work with them to design. So you're basically going from design to co-design, and then once you co-design it, you work with them together and try to sort of find the solution to that. So there are a number of this is one really good example of the let's say for the the Guildford Living Lab. So this is a school which is very close to the in the Guildford, and you can see that this school looks like this. And then there was a parent group who designed actually some of the idea. They say, you are working on green hedges, why don't we think of something like that? So they just created basically a nice sort of an image. So this is not a real image, they just put around. I say, okay, let's work together. So we worked with the head teacher, then the counselor, then the Zero Carbon Guildford, and then there is another parent group. And then we try to kind of look around what could be done actually in terms of realizing, let's say, this vision. So we managed to find some resources, and then created one of those case studies there. So this case studies included basically creating actually the green screen around this particular the area there, and then having the first living gate in the UK. So that gate basically has got the plants which are put by the children. It has got an automatic irrigation system. It opens up. The gate is fully functional. And in fact, if you go around the Central Primary School on the York Road, if you're passing through, have a look. This looks even more beautiful now at the moment. And what we did is on the back of it, we did the assessment, so we could understand actually what are the impacts. So, for example, what we found actually, the one thing which we were told that, by the way, since you have put this, the green screen, the green gate there, that the noise levels in the classrooms dropped significantly, and we found almost 5 decibels of difference. And obviously, then the impact on the PM 2.5 and the PM 10 was quite prominent as well, because what it was doing is you got a very busy road on this left side, and then this gate was acting like a tunnel. So it's like sucking the emissions and going actually to the classrooms and to that particular area. So this has been a fantastic case study, and there is a little video, but I'm not sure I've got time actually to play that, but I'm happy to share the link of that video, which explains actually what has been done in a very simple ways, and what are the take-home messages and how it can be implemented. So there has been, these sort of case studies we have created actually to, for people to follow, or some other schools to follow, the sort of, the implementation we have done here. I think I'm gonna leave that actually there. This climate literacy program I was talking about has been quite popular in a sense that we have done for around 1,000 children so far, and in different schools. So there were some schools in London, there are some schools in Guildford area, and it's really been an engaging journey, as you can see from the tweets as well, where children have been sort of enjoying, and they have really been, seeing what's happening, and then try to understand about the climate change. And it's quite fascinating. So what we are doing currently is trying to look for some support so we can replicate, we can possibly create actually the platform which can allow us to roll out across the UK and internationally. So rather than doing more manual, so the manual work is still remain, but we could possibly do, through a platform where it can be more widespread. And then obviously all this data and the methods have been published, in this particular paper. So that basically shows that the effectiveness of these programs. And one of the key things we found was that almost 80% of the children who participated in the program, their understanding about the climate change improved. So what we have done is we designed it in such a way that we can also assess the impact of this program before and after, the sessions we have been doing. So it's quite an interesting sort of, the way there. So now, before I how much time do I have, come?
We're at 40 minutes now, so if you begin to round up, maybe in the next 3 minutes or so.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just give a very, the top overview of the GP4 Estates project. So this is a project which is looking into how you can transform your front gardens, back gardens, balconies, and estates. So the whole idea is to create those DIY solutions. So this is a project which I have a pleasure of leading it, but it's funded by the UKRI, by the NERC there. So we are doing quite a lot of work around the case studies and the modeling and the monitoring. But the one key thing we are doing around this work is creating a tool, which is called the GP4 Estate tool. And that allows basically to, to make you the decision in terms of what you could include, and then also gives you basically the idea of what sort of benefits, if any, green or green infrastructure you put around your home in terms of the environmental, the benefits, as well as the DIY. So how you can do it by yourself. So there is a work in progress to create actually those environmental frameworks. So there is a paper which is currently under review, and then there was one recently published actually where we looked into the DIY sort of aspects of it. So this is a work in progress, possibly something to talk about, in the next sort of presentation there. The one last thing I would like to touch upon is the Green in Micro Network Plus. So Professor Bui and myself We are the leads on this network. This is a quite a niche network, actually, which talks about the indoor greening. I mean, we have loads of plants sometimes in sites, but we never know actually what are these plants doing, how are they interacting, how are they influencing the microclimate. We know that the plants are good and they look nicely from the aesthetic point of view. So the whole idea of this, of this network has been to create a community and build an understanding about the other plants and how they could help. So this is basically led by Sare, and then we got partners from Canfield, UKCH, Bath, Oxford, and York. And this is a network which is, we launched in October. So I would welcome all of you to join if you are interested in the indoor greening. And there's a lot of activities going around. So we just launched a mini fellowship. So if you are interested in going to spending some time with your collaborators in this particular area, so we can fund. So that the scheme is still open, and you can find that on the on the Greening Network, the web page. We also got quite a lot of activities coming up in terms of the sandpit, so we'll be funding some projects. If you have got some brilliant ideas around it, please let us know, and we'll be happy to support. There's a webinar series which will be running. If you are interested in talking to this audience, we'll be very happy to sort of do that. And we are running these rapid reviews, which will look around the IEQ and air purification, IEQ monitoring and modeling, health and well-being, and optimization. So there is quite a lot of work currently in progress in there. So, and one of the one of the pieces we just finished was looking into the 10 questions around it. So what are the benefits in terms of the equity, health, and ecological? And this is a paper which is under review. So I'm not going to go into detail, but what we try to do is the same way what we did for outdoors. We try to kind of characterize actually what are the indoor plants, what could be the categories, and so on. So this is a work actually which is in there, and come up with some sort of a very simple framework, which is still under review, but we can talk about it in more detail. But the one key idea there is that there is very little evidence actually, and very little confidence when we talk about the positive impact of the greening. And if you want to be a member, so here is the link basically, you can become a member of it. I think I will just finish there, just by saying that collaboration and multidisciplinarity is key if you wanted to take forward all this work together. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Prashant. So that was a really comprehensive account, moving right from sensory devices and measuring levels of pollution in the environment at multiple levels, right through to engaging policymakers, young people, commissioners in processes to implement, and critically to generate an evidence-based approach, although you point out, and there might be questions on that, and if not, I'll bring those to you in a moment, around how difficult it is to make judgments on the evidence to actually implement any particular intervention when things are moving so quickly all the way. Just remind people as well, of course, we in the World Psychiatric Association, in our Centre for Mental Health, Department of Psychiatry at Oxford, we obviously are interested in mental health and physical health and multimorbidity. And the bit that we haven't got into here is the mechanism by which air pollution, high temperatures lead to poor health, although it's in one of the fact sheets that Prashant has outlined. And so there is a clear process through which health is affected. And what we're trying to do with this sort of work is to think about urban environments, which we know are really strongly associated with poor health, and thinking about prevention. And for psychiatry, psychology, and mental health care generally, prevention may seem slightly peculiar to many people who are used to working in hospital settings or crisis services, but that is the way forward, because we just don't have sufficient resources and never will have to continue to meet the needs of people developing poor health. And so preventing is the only way forward, and particularly reducing the impact of poor health. I just wanted to sort of frame some of the work that Prashant has been presenting, a very comprehensive account. Now, any Q&A questions that have come up, I can't see any on mine, but I'm aware that sometimes the various firewalls that we have to contend with appear not to work. Eve, is there anything in your Q&A?
No, I can't see anything at the moment, but I can unmute everybody if people would like to raise their hands instead.
Okay, all right.
So I'll do that now.
Why don't you do that? And if people did want to speak and ask their question, they could do. But maybe I'll start off and use chair's privilege. So Prashant, I mean, that's just an amazing amount of work, and I particularly like your co-design process and your living labs at the end. I mean, this is moving so quickly, and I guess how easy is it to make judgments about for which interventions there's sufficient evidence to implement now versus for which interventions you kind of think it's right, but you're not sure, and people are willing to do it, and that's a difficult judgment to make. But essentially, councils and the public want to know what to do a lot of the time, and it's left to professionals and experts to make some sort of judgment. And politicians have different sorts of judgment as well about these things. So I just wonder how difficult that space is, and whether you've got any advice, but also how you've navigated that.
I think it's a really good question. I mean, there are like sort of, I mean, there are two approaches in there. The one is that sometimes when you're talking to the community, so they can always come up with what are the, let's say, the challenges they are seeing. They might have some of their ideas, but then what you do is, because you don't want to enforce your own ideas, so you can present a suite of, the possibilities actually, to them, and have some sort of discussions around them. So, for example, if this was a good example of the school, where there was quite common to have these hedges and the green screen, but then it was very uncommon to have, let's say, the green gate there. So it was quite a lot of discussion. Okay, what we could do in there? Can we put plastic seats? Can we do something? So there is I mean, the good thing these days is that our sort of communities, the local communities, are becoming very aware of the science, thanks to the social media and a lot of other the activities which are happening around by the charities to make them aware. So it is challenging, but then what you do is you try to put the pros and cons to them and say, by the way, this is what might work, this might not work. But then at the end of the day, you need to test them. You need to see what works, what doesn't work. So it is very difficult. And the best approach actually is to be more collaborative in the thinking, and then try to understand their perspective and try to come up with some suggestions and see whether they would work. I mean, for example, for the green gate, we always think in the beginning, that was in my mind actually there, that, okay, we can put this thing in, but really, will this go on longer? How will we maintain it? Whether the plants will remain there? How will that look actually? Let's say the plant's gone. So that was the doubts actually in my mind, when we were submitting this, we were doing this work. But at the same time, if you don't try it, and you don't know. And now, if you go there and you see the gate is flourishing like anything, you love it actually when you see it. So sometimes I think those doubts remain, but I think we have to possibly, think rationally and take the decisions what works best in that particular scenario.
Be willing to try, yeah. So we've got one question from Peter Coventry.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. Thanks, Prashant, for that excellent presentation. I've just got a question that kind of builds off the back of Cam's, because if we conceive of these interventions and innovations as essentially contributing to public health, we know that it can be very difficult to evidence public health innovations that are often place-based. So I just wondered whether you had a reflection on how we generalise and scale interventions of this kind from city to city, especially when cities vary in terms of their urban configuration, and how do we use the evidence to make judicious decisions about scarce resources? Because of course, for one city you might be trying to mitigate heat, for another it might be flooding or surface runoff, and for some cities internationally especially, it might be trying to improve drought resilience. And these interventions can't do all of those things. So I just wondered whether you had a sense of how we go from micro level sort of impact to scalable, broader evidence-based public health benefits.
Yeah, Peter, thank you for the question. I think it's a very good question. Just to divide this question into a couple of the smaller pieces. So the first thing about whether in a way that whether they are generic enough to apply to from one place to another. You are right, actually, sometimes one size doesn't fit all. So, for example, if you try to take, some of these interventions around the hedges and all into a very different climate, then that might not work actually there. So, what is really important in those particular cases to understand actually the local conditions as well, right? So, what are the local climatic conditions? And when it comes to the greening, it's always advisable to stick with the native sort of plants because they got the more sort of the better opportunity to survive in the harsh conditions and thrive actually in that native environment there. But some of the features are quite generic. So, for example, the green screen, the thing. So we tested it in different environments, let's say in London, in Guildford, in different schools, and then you see almost the similar sort of results there. So in a way that if you're talking about the school periphery and you're talking about the hedges and the green screens, and if this is a busy road actually there, they are going to walk actually. So that general ability has been established by repeating actually those case studies in several places there. The same case I think we can see with the let's say with the green gates as well. So in a way that we should not take the decisions which are simply considering that it's working here, so it will work there. So we need to also consider what are the local conditions to make the most efficient sort of the impact of these these things. Now, when you're talking about the upscaling in terms like the bigger scale, so scientifically this is what we have been doing in the GP forestries as well. So what you do is then you can set up the models that can allow you basically to upscale and understand the impact of it. So that is possible there. But at the same time, the biggest challenge is that when you are upscaling these things, the infrastructure, the science is there, the interventions are there, but then the resources are not there. So in terms of the practical sort of side, how you implement it, and that's really something which is quite challenging there. So, and I don't think I have the answer to that, to that problem yet, because the investment into this sort of things has been a major issue. So even for taking the example of the school, it took us like 5 years to kind of plan and do things and create actually something which we could deploy in this particular case there. Sorry, what was the last bit you said? I think I missed that bit. There was another question you had related to that.
No, I think that probably covers most of what I was
okay, perfect.
asking, Prashant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Thanks, Peter, for that question. I can't see any more questions at the moment, but Prashant, therefore I might just ask you another one if I can. So you talked about
there's one in the chat as well.
Oh, is there? Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's go to
From
that then.
Victor Chang. How will AI digital technologies help your research? And do you have any quantitative results or case studies? Thanks.
Again, that's a very good question, actually. How it has helped in the research? Yes. So especially looking into the, like we have been using the low-cost sensing, for example, quite a lot. And that's building upon the quite a lot of, the some of the digital and, the AI technologies in the sense that you get the data, but then you can use a lot of these tools actually to assess the data fairly quickly, which might have taken a long time. Now, what we are doing actually, going forward, the tool I was talking about, the GP forestry tool. So we are embedding actually the AI into the tool, so you can have more visualization. You can also have some sort of language models inbuilt into it, so that can allow it to provide a very nice short summary on the interventions you are thinking about. What could be the positive impact? What are the DIY aspect? What are the things they might want you to consider before doing that? So I believe that the AI and digital technologies are becoming quite important actually in this sphere of the work as well, apart from what's in the other sort of discipline there. And we have been trying to exploit them as we are going forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that question. We've got a few minutes left, so I might ask you a question if there's no other questions, Eve, if there's nothing else there.
No.
Yeah, okay. So you talked about India and China being the biggest source of particles and poor air quality. I mean, this is an old discussion. So in a sense, I'm looking at your evidence-based wisdom about how you go about enabling an industrializing nation, which requires growth to be essential for its future, given the number of people and the levels of poverty and isolation. And yet there is a cost in terms of carbon. And the rest of the world, particularly the industrialized world, which have been through that cycle, are suggesting this is not a reasonable way approach. And obviously the low middle income countries are feeling their economic development is being thwarted in some way. And I don't know if you have an answer to that, and whether you have a sense from all your typologies about the way people tackle this, whether in a way the low and middle income countries have got to leapfrog some of the disasters that we've been indulging in and do something differently, or whether there's another way to do this. I mean, there's a political answer and there's an evidence-based answer there. I guess I'm asking what you think on your expertise, because I know you do lots of work globally as well.
Yeah, I think it's it's an interesting and a difficult question to answer, as you rightly said. I believe the priorities actually in the developed and the developing countries sometimes are different. So, for example, in the developing countries, like let's say India or China, I think China is much advanced, I would say, in some sense actually, is that the people are still interested in getting the food, clothes, and the house actually. So there's the old saying about it. The environmental factors are still not actually in high up, in their agenda. So so the communities basically who are suffering continuously, but they're really not making actually as much noise and as much, the pressure on the system like we see in the developed world, right? So the pollution levels are still low, but you will see a lot more campaigns and a lot more charities and a lot more, the advocacy around it. So that means that bottom up, there is less pressure. The top down, then it's an issue of what are the priorities. So as you said, the economic development is the priority. So if you wanted to bring in the industries, then the problem with that is that comes with as a package is the pollution there, right? So, and then the technology makes a big difference as well. So, like if you look around the emission standards across, let's say that part of the world, in developed world, we are going Euro 6 and Euro 7 moving ahead, but then it's still actually, if you compare those standards, are very low. The technology of the vehicles makes a difference as well. So lots of vehicles still running on the diesel. The fuel type is, still having a lot more, the sulfur contents and not very clean actually, as you can think about. And this all sort of adds up. Then the infrastructure comes in as well. The roads, for example, the quality of the roads. And then when you are running the vehicles there, so it adds up in terms of the resuspension, but also producing more emissions there. So I think it adds up there. So there is the conditions are there. But the interesting thing is that people are the same, right? So, and we have got different guidelines or the standards. So, like I was showing that PM 2.5, we're talking about 40, let's say, in India, and we're talking about 15 or even 10 or less actually in Europe. So, these standards really not really been thinking about the health. They were mostly about what is feasible to meet actually the current priorities. So there is definitely a leapfrog, the needed if you really wanted to make a bigger, the bigger impact in this particular area. I think you're mute.
I'll keep doing that. Thank you for that. That was a really clear answer to a difficult question. Right, I think we're at the end of our time. So thank you ever so much, Prashant, for a really comprehensive account. And you're just involved in so many quite ambitious and really audacious, but also really impactful projects. And I'm not sure quite how you manage them all globally and locally as well. So thank you for sharing all that work. And I hope people do please get in touch with Prashant and join some of the networks. I'd like to thank also Eve Rogers for organising this seminar and a seminar series. And Eve's been outstanding in helping us coordinate. Thank you to all of you for joining and listening and for asking questions. Thank you to Rasheen also, who's been helping organise the seminar series, and to colleagues in the World Psychiatric Association who also sponsor this work. So thank you very much. Good afternoon, and have a lovely weekend. And if we don't see you, have a wonderful Christmas and New Year, all of you. We'll be in touch soon in the new year with a further session. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.